Hi there, I'm Dr. William Bird. I'm a GP, also researcher down at University of Exeter and co-editor of the Oxford Textbook of Nature and Public Health. Been working with Ruth Hunter for a long time, Professor Hunter, inspired by her work that she's done at Queen's. And it really is a great, kind of story that we've got from starting back in the 1990s, where nobody really knew about how important nature was, to what we now know of how important it is. So I really want to talk about the connection between nature and children's health, particularly around schools. But I've only got, 5, 6 minutes there, so I'm going to keep it very brief. And I wish I was here in person. Unfortunately, although I was here for the conference, fantastic yesterday, I can't make it today. Hence the reason we've got this. So I'm going to quickly share my slides, and hopefully this will come up pretty quickly. Excellent. And I'm just going to go through what is going on with nature and children. Well, first of all, we know that if children have been exposed to nature for a lot of their childhood, they will actually make much healthier, particularly mental health, adults. And psychiatric disorders actually diminish hugely when you've got children who've had that presence of green space. And we'll see in a minute why that happens, because there are different parts of the brain that have a big impact. One of them is the hippocampus. The hippocampus deals with behavior, it deals with learning, and it deals with the control of anxiety. So children who have larger hippocampuses tend to be less anxious, better at learning, better behavior, able to concentrate compared to those who've got a smaller hippocampus. And you can see here how rural children being outdoors very much is very different to children who've been brought up in an urban. Now, this is not saying exactly that nature is the reason for this, but from all the studies that have been seen, I think we'll find that that is probably the main reason, that exposure to nature. So not only does it actually help the hippocampus in the child deal with all the anxieties, worrying, schoolwork, and everything else, it also is there set for an adult, as we saw in that first study. And there's also the telomeres. Now, I'll tell you in a minute about what they are. But again, children in primary school who spend longer time in green space have longer telomeres. Now, the telomere is really essential. I put a little yellow box. If you get these slides, you can read that it helps the cell divide. If you don't have a very long telomere, once it gets to too short, that cell can no longer divide. It therefore disappears. You've got one less cell in your body, and that's why we get shorter. That's why our skin gets thinner. That's why our muscles get smaller and our brain gets smaller, because we're losing cells because they can no longer divide. It's a bit sad, really, and that's aging. But if you've got a very long telomere at the beginning of your life, then you're far more likely to live longer, have less disease. And children who have short telomeres because of stress actually, therefore, are going to live a shorter life, have more disease. And that is really something that we should all be responsible for, that children leave childhood with long telomeres. Because if nature does that, then they need nature. We absolutely have no excuse but to give them those telomeres, make them longer. Now, you might be wondering, is this all circumstantial evidence? No, it's not. Here's some studies that have been done, admittedly in adults, but it's actually showing that children, when you're walking in an urban area or walking in a green space area, that the brain changes. And here is the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that senses fear and distress. It's very important. It's what makes you suddenly jump or makes you suddenly look around when you start to see problems that are suddenly kind of, you don't quite know what they are, but you know there's some danger there. And that can overdo its work, and they can make you jumpy all the time, anxious all the time. And that's what we're seeing a lot in younger people. The amygdala has taken over a lot of social media, etc. But look what happens after a walk. It absolutely shrinks down just in 60 minutes. Now, of course, that's the blood supply going down. But imagine if that happened every single day, that amygdala will shrink down to its normal size and help that child be less anxious, less worried, and less fearful. And that is because of day to day, like your muscles training. And likewise, the hippocampus, we've heard there, after the walk in nature, it goes up in size. The blood flow increases. Again, imagine that happening day in, day out. You'll get larger hippocampus set in your brain. You'll get a smaller amygdala. And then there's another part of the brain right at the front, which actually deals with negative rumination, hugely important for evolution. We need to focus on the negative things because they could be the things that make us ill or actually harm us. So our body's designed to actually concentrate on negative things. The media know that very well. But you can see that in nature, once you go for a walk in nature, you actually clear your head. You deal with those negative ruminations, they calm down. And if you continue with negative ruminations, you get poor sleep, you get anxiety, you get worries, and you get depression. It's a really important segue into depression. So nature can prevent you going into depression, not just as an adult, but as a child. And then we move away to the more physical aspects of bugs and things in the nature, which we're part of. We are nature. So we've depended on all of these bacteria and viruses and called old friends. They help to regulate the immune system, calm it down, stop it getting into a bit of a tiz, which causes asthma, causes even type 1 diabetes, causes multiple sclerosis. So all these things are going up and are thought to be because the bugs, the bacteria, the old friends, as they're called, which we pick up from soil, are not doing their job in the body to help regulate the immune system. So being outdoors and you're picking those bugs up will help to regulate the immune system and reduce those things. And even the gut microbiome, which again is filled up with bacteria which we pick up around going in nature, that actually helps to reduce the chronic stress and problems and anxieties as an adult. So a child's gut microbiome affects the brain later on through the vagus nerve and the gut-brain axis. We've done some work on understanding about how green space helps with physical activity, and we know that children who are outdoors are far more likely to want to be active, and therefore physical activity goes up. In fact, I chair a group in the West Midlands Combined Authority where we're looking at creating the outdoor region, which is the whole region of the West Midlands, focusing on the outdoors to make it a safe place for people to be outdoors. And you can see at baseline, those who didn't go to green space at baseline, only 32% moved up to being physically active from being inactive. Those who did, 44%, likewise feeling safe. So it's not just having green space, it's making them feel safe in that as well. And we can see that people don't feel safe now. You know, the number of children aged 8 who walk to school has gone down from 86% in 71 to 18% in the study that we've just finished. And that's simply because there's no place that people feel safe. And we just have to make that area around a school important to be able to walk and feel safe and connect to the trees and the green space. You don't need a park, you just need the trees out there. Just being to be outdoors makes a massive difference. So I hope that's helped. I hope that gives that a little bit of insight to what is going on and why we can't avoid this anymore, why we have to deal with it if we want the next generation past us to really inherit a much better place and a much better brain and a much more restful environment. Thank you.